Set in 2018, and today just come here like it's snowing here, like it's great, right? So I took a picture outside window and put on my accounts for my network, and in 2 seconds, the first feedback is because I put a title, spring snow in Denver, and the response is, I will see Christmas in July in New York City. So the reason I make this joke is in the IT world, right? A lot of things is unpredictable, just like the weather here, especially in the project. So how many of you in your project, you never see any performance issue? Probably not, right? And how many of you doing a project, you see the performance issue when you're close to go production? None? That's quite a lot. So today I'm going to present actually it's a project, I just did it last October, which is I was helicopter drop into an area, into a project that have a severe performance issue 3 weeks before it went live. And so we are making a choice is either we just can this project or how do we salvage this project, so still make it useful. And you're talking about a few $1 million investment. Okay, I'm not going to talk into the high level. I will just walk through my experience, and there will be eventually we find a solution. It's a trade-off of performance and storage. We're using a specific technique to resolve this issue. It's a niche market, and also I will bring up to the generics how I did it end to end. So that was last October, right? I get a phone call, this project has an issue, it's a performance issue, and the client is screaming, yelling, they're not gonna buy into it. So I ended up on site and located, it's one of the largest liquor distribution, the office is very nice, you can drink as you want, right? When you see the UI, it's well defined, but when you run into the functionalities and you will see some performance, when you click something, it will last 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. It's not bearable. So this is the issue, and we only have 3 weeks before it go live. So it's discovered during the UAT. Thank you. So then first of all, you look at it, this is the issue, right? And how do we identify the issue? And then let's say, what's the root cause of the issue? How to measure it, and how to find a solution to resolve this specific issue? Of course, I will be jumping up in here. So usually you have a generic way to do it. Like look at hardware first, then you look at each one by one. So usually this is kind of 6 points in generically. We will look into that part. First of all, you look at network connectivity. Everything is fine, state of arts. They're using Heroku as a pass. Also, you have some system at the Amazon AWS, 1 gigabit pipeline, there's no network issue. However, if you look at all their servers, it's a pass, right? And you find out on the database they're choosing a low end. That eventually become a bottleneck. You can measure, I will go down to how we measure it. So you can quantify what's the issue. So you bump up, first of all, you bump up to middle tier and high tier, you gain some performance improvement, okay? You look at the database, they used a open source database. It was there, and say, why use that one? There is a reason, historical reason they use it, and they have quite a few dependency on that database. So basically the marching order is you are not going to touch it, because if you touch it, there will be ramifications on other business units. And again, this is business driven, right? Okay, so then data. So the original architecture they define is they already did it with its simple kind of mobile device driven kind of application. And everybody thinks this is fine. They're using 50,000 records. If they think fine, we can scale up to a big one. And what's the data growth? nobody knows. So that is part is totally missing. So I will talk about that later. How do we define the quality attributes? Make sure what we do in the next phase. Okay. Then resource utilization. When I look at it, usually it's like a 3-tier, right? Simply, it's a front end. They have a middle tier, is API services. Then have a backend database. And you look at that, is I think why almost all the business rules is in API. Even some work which is supposed to be done by the database ended up in the API layer. And then my question is, why you go that way? And because again, this is client driven, because they think their database is perfect. You don't have to touch that stuff. And we don't staff a resource on the DBA side. So you only have the middleware, the middle tier resource, the API guys. So they put everything in the API. Okay, that's definitely that's the issue. Okay, right? So the resolution is bring a DBA, move the logic supposed to be done by the database, do by database. And then you also improve the performance to a certain level. So that's another corrective action we did. Then look at the code, right? It's a code, actually, the API service code is pretty good quality. If you look at them, you use a tool to scan it, and if you look at them, the documentation, everything is, so don't touch that part if it's good. Except that you have to remove quite a chunk of code from a middle tier level to the database tier. And then the peak user load and the traffic spikes, you measure it. I don't think there are specific issues here. So if you look at here, right, number 1, you have issue. Number 2, definitely we will go down to more. And then number 3, the gross data, we don't know, we have to measure it. And we need to know on the business side, again, it's business driven, what would the data volume supposed to be. And then the resource utilization, we have to do some kind of a shifting around. And the quality is pretty good, and we don't see, especially the user load spike, but until you measure it, right? So the next thing is, let's say we still have a severe performance issue this time, right? So you have to measure it, quantify it, see what is the root cause of the issue. So you do the application level, and server level, and the platform level. Actually, we went down specifically it is narrowed down is on the database end. And it makes sense, because then we go to the business. What's the data volume? All the testing data you have, 50,000 records. The business projection, the requirements, eventually we find out. They never done this kind of quality attributes, the kind of workshop upfront, right? QWA, a workshop upfront. So business eventually go back to talk to the business, different units. 500,000 is the 500,000 record. 50 million record is what they expected when you go live. 50,000 jump up to 50 million. It's a huge jump. Of course, when they're testing it, they're using about 2 million records. It's already bad. You can imagine if you go to 50 million, how worse it can go, right? And then usually, common leading practice, usually you double it in 5 years. I think we are in worst case scenario. This is kind of a business opportunity, kind of sales opportunity, kind of a portal. So in 5 years, usually they won't exceed 100 million of records. And if you look at the open source database, if you Google it, it should be able to handle 100 million. That's not an issue, regardless how bad it can go, right? But however, what's the key issue? Then you look down into it, then you look at the usability on side. I would actually look at here. On the usability side we measure it on the usability side is that you have, on the UI side, you have about 25 filters up front. So then the question is why you have, what the world you want to put 25 filters in one screen, right? You know the data aggregation will be complex, it will be very complex. It could kill you at the end. Plus, if you look at the computation on the database end is so complex. So you have a large level of data aggregation, and plus a level of complex, basically you're killing that database when we do ad hoc queries. So this is the issue you had to resolve. And then we propose like, let's go to, can we do something like, use the AWS Redshift. That should resolve the issue. Or we go to a Oracle database is more high-end database. I'm not doing any advertisement for any database, right? So I used to do it for, if you do Oracle 11G, you should be handled 2 billion records without any issue. If you go to 10 billion records, even Oracle, you will have some issues there. If you have a very complex data aggregation and the computation, that was not true for the database. And for here, definitely you have issue. So so basically we have the issue is, okay, come down here. Okay, so right now, the problem is quite crystal clear, right? So this is the web portal for a customized solution for sales opportunity. It's a simple portal application, right? And the architecture was set on top of existing mobile application. And there's no quality attributes workshop. There's no non-functional requirements upfront. Don't ask me why. It was not there, right? Everybody think like, yeah, we use a cloud service. Everybody should be fine. Well, that's the perception or delusion we get into it. And the clients already invested $2 million on that. Okay, that's not it's a business, like it's not a small amount, right? And and the quality attributes workshop was not conducted, and the performance at the critical non-functional requirements was not defined in the early stage. So you go back, ask the client, again, it's a very quick kind of interview. They ask like, what kind of acceptance level for your non-functional requirements in terms of performance. Okay, 5 seconds. Okay, and this is the architecture they have as is. So originally, see if I can, whoops. Originally they have this is a web portal, right? So it's a web iOS application. You go through a API web service, and you have, of course, you have a proxy server, and you have a database, right? You have simple database. It's an open source database, and then you have EDW. You have a feeder information over here, and you have other, security, Salesforce application over there. So it's a really simple one. It works very well for the web portal, 50,000 records. But if you scale up in UAT 2 million records, it's bogged down, and never mention about you have to do a 50 million and to 100 million records. And the marching order is they are not going to swap that one, because the simple solution is, any kind of a non-SQL database or redshift column-based or even high-end commercial database should resolve the issue because of other dependencies over there. Like in the morning, they already talk about if this is the perfect architecture for this unit. Holistically, if you put over there, will not be. So we have to resolve this issue, or they will cancel this project. And you talk about a few $1 million you already invested. So there's always a solution, right? It's like first of all, let's tune up the database. It's a traditional way to do it. I bring a top niche DBA. I know there's much you can do, but we did as much as we can. Still, you bump up to $1 million records, everything is fine. If you go up, you cannot do that. So what we did is we proposed a solution is using a trade-off of the storage. We even doing a different level of index because of so many criteria. It's not going to work out on the back end. So the solution actually we introduced is using Solar or Elex, any kind of file-based index upfront in the architecture by moving the data aggregation and the sorting to Solar as index service. So what we did is we didn't change the overall, just add Solar upfront. So when you do, then you talk about to the business. Again, everything is business driven, right? Then you analyze if that service performance is already good enough within the SLA, 5 seconds, we don't touch it. But all these troubled service, we move it to Solar. So basically, is overnight, you create an index. Every night, overnight, you have a create index here, upfront index. You can use a Solar or any index service. And when you do the search, the API will reroute the service go here as upfront. And that effectively resolved the issue. I can tell you quickly is, you see the pattern. We effectively manage it to from, like some of them 20 minutes down to 5 seconds because of that small trick you did. Effectively resolve this issue. Of course, nothing is for free, right? So there is a caveat here. Lesson learning is, you do that overnight, every night you do it, create all the index from scratch, and you fulfill the business needs. Again, the key is talk to the business folks, understand their needs. Right? They don't want to change these 25 filters because they think they are on the UI end, and they think this is, they're all experienced users. They need this kind of criteria, flexibility to do their job, looking for different opportunities, sales opportunities. But some of them, you can really reroute traffic to here. However, when you do the real time, some of them they will create opportunity on the fly. Actually, Solar can do a very good job. If the data amount is not huge, they can index on the fly without causing any performance issue. And we measure that stuff. So after we implement that stuff, what you can do, right, is we did that, you have to quantify them to make sure how the service is working for them. Because there's so much things, and the client will say like, hey, how do you prove it to me? So by the end, you have to do the performance load test, which we did using a tool, kind of like a low impact. That's the way to, right? What you did is you define different scenarios, like we define different user group. You have to simulate the real world scenario, because otherwise, what is UAT? They cannot pull like 100 people to do that stuff. We're talking about 100 people. This is the peak time, and the 100 million records, right? And divided in, based on our interview, 4 user groups, like a power user group, corporate user, sales manager user. And based on the distribution, each one we have 3 scenarios. We simulate that. It's a day of life. And then you use the tool to load the data. It's not like you hit everything at the same time. You randomly, let's set up a 1 hour, you randomly ramp up all the user amount from 1 user to about 50 users for 10 minutes, then you ramp up to 100 users. You hit it randomly and simultaneously hit the entire system. And then you measure the response times if you can fit. Okay. After you continue run about 20 minutes to 1 hour, then you ramp it down. And then overall you measure, collect all the data to show to the client, like if this is meet your performance expectation. Meanwhile, you cannot sacrifice user experience. It's the same thing, right? So what we did is, so we implement the Solar indexing, right? Query the API and the tuning, that's what we did. Load the testing, and the database environment tuning. So you get all I used the word like 3 cocktail shots. It's not like a one solution. You have a combined solution. Of course, using the Solar, it's a trade-off for your performance, your storage space for performance was the key issue to resolve this issue. And this is the measurement we did. And the performance storage trade-off, by example, this is the homepage load, right? Opportunity search load. And each one, you show it to the client. And plus, we're using kind of like an agile approach. During the agile, by the end of the day, before we went live, you show them the results, and you not only test yourself by a test team, but also have the client team to join into a test each one by one. And also make sure, right, before you go to that new, it's not new, just improved architecture, it's a trade-off for what? You trade off your performance, also your maintainability, because you have one more components, one potential single point of failure. Make sure the client supporting team can sustain, know how to do that stuff. Otherwise, it will also be an issue. So overall, we salvaged this project, right? And we didn't cancel this one. The cons is we add a little bit supportability, which they can handle very well. It's all self-contained by itself, and also there's a caveat like we tried to use web solar, didn't work out very well, so we put this one into the on-premise solar. Install this one on the Amazon AWS, and it worked out very well. So this is just a very niche market example. So lesson learned is each project may have different levels of performance system, right? But make sure we need to define the quality attributes in terms of non-functional requirements upfront. And when you try to manage it as early as possible, especially when you do system integration tests, it should catch up right away versus you wait way late on the UAT. At the time is almost like I say, if you cancel it or you want to still keep it, it's really a lot juggling around the dollar amount. Like, there's no winner versus how much money you're going to spend either here or there, or just cancel it, just waste the entire project. But there's always a way to do that. There's always a way to resolve the issue. And thinking out of the box, talk to the business stakeholder, usually they will give you much better idea. And in real world, it's not something can do or cannot do. Why you didn't do that stuff is how we did it and how we can do it to satisfy the business needs. Eventually, by the end of the day, it is, you talk about profitability and the maintainability down the road. So it's a quick thing. Want to share, my thing, and feel free to have any questions. Thank you. It's easy.
All right. Thank you
All right,
so
cool.
much.